I want to welcome speakers of our last panel to talk about their success stories and observations fighting in their local communities. CFER's friend, Miss Nicole Bernstein, will moderate this panel. Ms. Bernstein is the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors and first-generation US-born bilingual Israeli-American. She is the co-founder of Peer K-12, a grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting equality and educational responsibility in kindergartens through 12th grade. I'm gonna give you the. Did Frank give you this?
No.
Okay.
I can make sure this was on. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this weekend with you all. As my bio states, my main concern is the anti-Semitism in K through 12. When I started looking at this a few years back, about 4 or 5 years ago, we realized that a lot of it was coming in through ethnic studies, which was unsurprising when you learn the history and the background of how ethnic studies began. But today, we've got a few other parent advocates who are doing the work on the ground, which, again, as has been said many times, it is impossible to really win this war without the grassroots organizing. I believe it was Lance, I don't know if he's still here, but you said grassroots. Gary? Tony. Also, grassroots really is the key because we're fighting against a humongous machine, and they are sort of counting on the fact that the people inside the districts, the parents, but also the people who live in the district, even though you're not parents of students in the district, are constituents. So that is something very important to realize and to understand, and it's a power that, when wielded correctly, can yield incredibly positive results. I went a little bit off script there, sorry, as I often do. I only have the second pages here. I'd like to introduce the panelists for today. First, we have Rachelle Babler, the co-founder of PUSD Community Watch. Next, we have Julie Hamill, Palos Verdes School Board Trustee and an attorney with the California Policy Center. And Kelly Schenkoske, parental rights advocate and the founder of A Time to Stand. Is a website and a podcast, I believe?
Yeah, that's right.
So each of these advocates, parents, are fighting in different respects and in different regards, but each is digging in and contributing in their way. And Julie, actually, I'd like to start with you. In your opinion, what are the most important issues in the parental rights fight, which has been going on for the last 3 years? And what has your time at on the Palos Verdes School Board revealed to you that you didn't know before?
Can I stand up?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm cramped back here. I'm going to wander around and talk to you guys. So I'm Julie Hamill. I'm a mom of 3 little boys. I'm an attorney, and I was elected to the school board in Palos Verdes in 2022. Before 2020, I was a normal person who had no public profile. I kept to myself, but the government started messing with my children, and so I had to get active and involved. There are a lot of really important issues in the parental rights fight, and it's hard to narrow them down. But before I get to that, I wanted to address, I think it was Frank or Wenwan who said we were going to talk about our victories in DEI, and I was thinking about it, and I'm on a 4-to-1 board, so I'm a minority vote. I have no allies. And so I haven't been able to put any real policy into place, but what I have done is I've brought this issue up and I've discussed it in ways that people are not used to publicly hearing. And I've stood up with courage in the face of being called racist. And I think that that gives other people courage to speak honestly about what is going on, because everybody's too scared to speak the truth. And so I think it's important, and it is a mini victory, to just have that courage and be able to speak openly and honestly without the fear of what's going to come for you, because they're going to come for you with all sorts of labels. But something that I have done is Barry Weiss has written a number of really powerful articles and tablets on her own Free Press and Honestly podcast. Really, she does the best job, I think, of summarizing the problems with DEI and why it needs to be ended, and its impacts and promotion of anti-Semitism.
Just as a show of hands, who knows who Barry Weiss is? Oh, okay, great.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
So we have the opportunity to give closing comments at our school board meetings, and so multiple times I have just read a passage. I'll take 3 minutes and I'll read a passage from Barry Weiss on DEI, because she's so eloquent in how she approaches it. But then getting to parental rights issues, how much time do I have? 1 minute? Or?
How much time do we have?
I don't want to talk over anybody else.
I think we have about an hour, if I'm not mistaken, for our panel. But I think that we want to get to some Q&A, because as parent advocates on the ground, we might want to answer some questions. But
I'll try to answer this in 1 minute. Okay. So in the parental rights fight, I'm sure you've all heard of AB 1955. Raise your hand if you have not heard of it. Okay. Okay. Well, there are people that haven't heard of it, so that's good. I can educate you. Long story short, it's a really long story. It's hard to make it short. But in 2013, we had AB 1266, which added Education Code 261.5F, which says you can use whatever gendered facilities, restroom at school based on your own gender identity as self-identified. That's all. That's all it said, that kids have to have access to whatever facilities they prefer. But then the Department of Education created guidance without going through the regulatory process for administrative regulation. They just published something online in FAQ that encouraged teachers and administrators to do things like create separate files for children who are identifying by a different gender and keep them hidden in a place where other people can't see them, including their parents, and don't tell the parents unless you have consent. And this was all done outside of the law. There was no statute to support this guidance and this policy. And attorneys for the school districts were telling the districts that they needed to create these confidential gender support plans and keep them in these separate areas and not tell parents. And then children were being socially transitioned at school, and parents were finding out much later, or not at all. And so this led to certain districts enacting parental notification policies, where ultimately these policies say things along the lines of, whenever there is a change to someone's unofficial or official records, the parents will be notified. Tony Thurmond took issue, Sonia Shaw, who's the president of the Chino Valley School District, is amazing, was sort of the face of this fight. And then Tony Thurmond took her on. They got into litigation with the Liberty Justice Center, who's doing fantastic work in this space. And essentially, Liberty Justice Center put the state in checkmate. And the state had no more legal arguments. They couldn't argue that these policies were discriminatory, because they were simply saying, you must notify parents if there's a change in a record. Didn't say why. And so then the state got an amended AB 1955, which was an entirely different bill when it was introduced. In May, they substituted the entire bill with new language that says schools cannot require their personnel to tell parents about anything relating to a child's gender identity or sexuality. But if you read closer and you read the preamble, it purports to create a constitutional right to privacy in a child from that child's parents, which doesn't exist, but the state claims that it does. And in my opinion, it creates potential legal liability for teachers who voluntarily disclose this information to And so this is a huge problem. And what I'm doing in my district is I am demanding a public briefing from our attorneys so that we know what our teachers are being told. Are you telling our teachers that they have to lie? Are you telling them that there are going to be legal consequences if they volunteer this information to a child's parents? Or are they permitted to volunteer this information to a child's parents? If a child's parents asks specifically, is this teacher going to get in trouble if they're truthful, or are you requiring them to lie? And I think a lot of the attorneys are going to say, this is attorney-client privilege, we need to talk about it behind closed doors. Don't let that happen. This is not attorney-client privilege.
Says the attorney.
We deserve to know how our teachers are being advised by the district to conduct themselves with respect to keeping secrets from parents about their children in school. So on a broader scale, the biggest problem right now is the fact that the government is really aggressively trying to insert itself in between parents and their children in school. They don't believe that you have your children's best interest in mind. They, the government, have your child's best interest in mind. And your child is now the government's child. So that's very concerning.
Actually, that's been going on for a very long time. I think parents only just realized it, same as I realized it, when we all had to go to Zoom school. And suddenly I was listening to things and my ears perked up, not in a good way. So yeah, that's been going on. I think it's finally public. But this notion that the teachers and the educators, who are the experts, know better than the parents of the children is not new, unfortunately. I'd like to go to Rachelle, my neighbor, sort of, from San Diego. Why don't you give us? I know that Frank gave kind of an overview of Clapgate, which I think is just a hilarious nickname for that. And really just talk a little bit about how that scandal became a rallying point for the local community that I feel at that point had just had enough.
Yeah, so a little background on Clapgate or Clappergate. It's been called both of those in the media. How it started was the Del Norte High School team, softball team, had their banquet in May of 2023. And the superintendent's daughter was on that team. And at the banquet, her daughter received MVP. And there's video of this. They showed it in the news, everybody clapping as she walks up to get her award. Well, the superintendent decided that night that her daughter didn't get enough claps, and there was some sort of a conspiracy against her daughter, and decided to notify one of those softball players almost midnight that night without the parents' consent or knowledge, and questioned her for about 40 minutes. The next day, the superintendent proceeded to question another almost dozen of the students, threatening to keep them from graduating, which was a week away, unless they all admitted to some conspiracy against her daughter and not clapping loud enough. And so that's kind of how it all started.
This is the superintendent. Okay.
Yes. And she flat out on the news said, I would never do that, many times, and all the text messages came out and screenshots of her calling. So, and then what happened was during the summer, so this was May, one particular softball player was targeted, and that softball player just happened to be the pitcher along with her daughter, who was a pitcher. They were the two pitchers going into their senior year. So
So her daughter's main competition.
Her main competition, yeah. And this student was then given a document that she had to sign, saying that she did something. She was part of this, conspiracy against her daughter. And if she didn't sign it, she would start her senior year without being able to do any extracurricular activities. So she would just have to go to school. She refused to sign it. She said she didn't do anything wrong. So she had to start her senior year without doing anything but going to school. This would include not being able to play softball too and all those things. So a formal complaint was filed from the family via a law firm, and the board and the district was given 93 pages of evidence of her calling, the screenshots, what she was posting on social media, which was very passive-aggressive behavior and directed to these softball players, we believe. And they did nothing. The district dismissed it. Nothing was done. And so this was when I kind of found out about it. Somebody connected me to the parents of the daughter that was targeted. And it was in November when they all decided to come speak out and speak at the board meeting. And, we've talked about this before, how scared people are. And they were definitely scared because we're talking about the superintendent. This person has the most power in the district, obviously is bullying and harassing many people on his team.
Was she aware that the district has an anti-bullying policy?
I believe that was brought up many times when we spoke out at board meetings. There was a meeting, I remember, with the parents and families, and, they were very scared to speak out. And this is when we talked about our experiences speaking out, being called all these kinds of horrible names. And it really starts with one person that creates that momentum that keeps everything moving. And so they all came and spoke out in November, December, and January. All those months, board meetings were packed. We did signs, we did call the media, people were interviewed. The most powerful part, I think, of those board meetings, the three that were, a lot of people spoke out, were the students. The softball players, there were three that spoke out, one each month. They had the most incredible talks. I've been speaking at almost every board meeting for the last 2 years. And those three students that spoke were just, it was incredibly moving, and the media caught it. And the thing about, they were so, they were really scared. They're facing their accuser, which is 10 feet away, the superintendent. And the girls that came to support all stood around, the person that was speaking. It was really powerful. And then with public pressure, the board decides, I guess we need to do something now. So we're going to investigate, not the superintendent, but we're going to investigate the softball team. So they did an internal investigation to investigate the softball team, and out of that came more evidence of the superintendent's misdoings and her outrageous behavior. And in February, she was put on administrative leave, and then that April, she was terminated with cause. So, yeah, it was a huge injustice. These seniors had to go through their entire senior year with the superintendent being at their practices, staring them down, like retaliatory type of behavior that was shared at board meetings. But it was a huge win for the district for sure.
Amazing. Kelly.
Yeah.
Hi. So you have been fighting in your local school district in Salinas for many years now. Have you seen a growth and convergence of the local parental rights movement over those years?
Absolutely.
And how many years have you been?
Yeah, interesting story. So I'll stand for a minute so those in the back can see me. My name's Kelly Schenkoske. Back in the fall of 2016, prior to that, I was just, like Julie shared, I was just a mom. I didn't know how to go to a school board meeting. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know there was an agenda or a packet. No tools in my toolbox. But I had been advocating for more lunch recess back in 2016 because I had a very active second grade boy. And so one day I find out that the principal has ended the last 10 minutes of lunch recess for more sitting. And he has the kids entering into mindfulness meditation, and he's using a Tibetan singing bowl. And so I'm starting to learn these little facts, and my friend, another mom, asked her child's teacher and said, explain that it's a Buddhist exercise, and I'm still standing there dumbfounded after school pickup. But I met with the principal, who had been my high school teacher in the same Pacific Grove district. And that's when I started to hear this word, social emotional learning, educating the whole child. And it drove me to research, a lot of research, and I haven't stopped. I wanted to learn everything I possibly could about the subject, so I called Buddhist temples. I talked to a woman who's Hindu from Nepal. I called somebody who makes Tibetan singing bowls. I went to a New Age store, the true story. I went to a New Age store that used to be at the American Tin Cannery near Monterey Bay's Cannery Row, and I acted like I wanted to engage in mindfulness meditation and asked the owner talked with him for a better half of an hour, pretty much, on how to engage in this, and went home and took notes. Because I was determined, after that first meeting with the principal, where he told me, you know, Kelly, kids are facing more difficulties today than they ever have in the past, which sounded like a line for me. You know, and so we have this new program, and it's rooted in neuroscience. So I got the marketing ploy, and I could see it as I sat there. But I thought to myself, I know nothing about what he's talking about. And he's asserting himself, in my opinion, over me, the parent, in my child's life. I was never told about these practices. I wasn't asked permission for my child to engage in this. And so I decided, in order for me to go toe-to-toe with this district, with this principal, I'm gonna have to know more than him. I'm gonna have to know more than all of them. So I did what I knew I could do. So I started reading, and then that was almost, well, this October it'll be 8 years of almost daily reading different subjects. So that started my journey, but then it was learning about comprehensive sexuality education in December 2018 and getting involved statewide. And then from there, we had a lot of experiences with the district, with things that happened to both of our children, repercussions for me being vocal at the school board. And we decided for our family, my kids have been asking, I was resisting. They wanted to homeschool, and I was willing to give it a try. I'd been raised in public school, so I had opinions, but it's been a wonderful blessing and a reward. But after gaining all these tools over the years, despite choosing to take our kids out, it was my hope to help others, because everybody thinks, well, if you take your kids out of the school, why do you care anymore? Well, I care because there's other parents that need those tools. There's other parents that don't know what's going on. They haven't been reading until 2, 3 in the morning like I was doing, and they could use some support. So I decided to keep going. I had made friends with many good teachers who had leaked me information that was very helpful. I was researching in early 2021 equitable math, ethnic studies, and was tracing it back a little bit to the Monterey County Office of Education, particularly equitable math. And I saw the thanks to the contributors, and there was my county
You
office.
mean 1 + 1 equals whatever you decide it equals?
Yes. So at any rate, in June of 2021, I went with a group of community members to Salinas, June 22nd, 2021, after having already looked into ethnic studies. And that was our first school board meeting. And that's where I learned that R. Tolteca Clayton, I may not be pronouncing his name correctly, but he was working directly with that district. And he had provided them a creation from this book, Rethinking Ethnic Studies. He's one of the editors of this book. He had been hired by the school district at $1,500 an hour to train and develop this Salinas Union High School District ethnic studies curriculum. And so he had also made news, if you had ever seen the Chris Rufo story about the chants to the Aztec gods of human sacrifice, that's him. And they were in here. So at any rate, did a public records request, obtained a lot of information, and then kept going to research different subjects.
Yeah, so, you know, it's interesting what you said about why don't you just take your kids out and homeschool or school choice. And I get that actually a lot, because there is a San Diego Jewish Academy. It's situated in the neighborhood that I'm in, so it's in my district, but it's a private school. But the problem is that when you take your kids out of the public school, you sort of lose the ability to see what they're doing. And it's not really just about your kids, it's about all kids. And I often get the question, oh, do you think maybe we need to do more Holocaust education in schools so people know about anti-Semitism? And I often say no, because when you do that, you don't teach how the Holocaust happened, you only teach that it happened. Or you read the Anne Frank book, you check off the box, and you move on. The how it happened, how did they indoctrinate an entire country into not only looking away from the atrocities, but also participating? That's the most important thing. And it's interesting what you said about you go and you read until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Can everyone just think ahead 2 or 3 generations? What are the stats again on the reading levels of our students now? What's going to happen when they're grown-ups and their parents, and they're not going to be able to read and study the way that you all have? We're going to have a much bigger problem on our hands than we do now. So this isn't just a fight for my kids and for your kids. It's for all of our kids. And that's something that I really try to stress a lot to people. Rachelle, do you want to talk a little bit about the Jedi group?
Oh, you can. I think you'd be better at that. But
So we talk a lot about the intersectionality of DEI and anti-Semitism and ethnic studies and hate. And I was actually personally alerted to this by one of the Jewish parents in Poway Unified School District, and she let me know that there was this group that was part of the PTA, and that there was the head of the diversity piece of it was a mom who was also on the PTO, which is it's called something different in the middle school or elementary school than it is in the district. She was one of the leaders in the district for the PTA. And she held extreme anti-Israel, anti-Jew views. So extreme that you would have thought she was a jihadist. I mean, she was extreme. And I was researching her and following the case for a very long time. I actually alerted the district a few times to this person. I sent examples of what she was posting, and I tried to give them the opportunity to do the right thing. Curious as a school board member what you would do if you got some of these text messages as a warning from a parent. And I wasn't going to go public with any of them because I really wanted the school district to do the right thing. I am a very firm believer that not every educator is part of this conspiracy. Not every teacher is part of this indoctrination. There are so many more who are well-meaning but don't know this stuff, right? Knowing anti-Semitism, whether it's coming from the left or the right, is very nuanced. I have no expectation that everyone's just going to know it the way that I know it. So I try to give the benefit of the doubt, but the district had the information for a good 4 months, and that's 4 board meetings, and did nothing. So we finally leaked it to social media, to a few key accounts, and once it was leaked, PRK sent out an email to the school board trustees and the superintendent and assistant superintendents, and we gave all the evidence, and we listed all of the ed codes that had been broken. Even though this was not an employee of the district, she was a volunteer, but the DEI group in Poway was receiving funding from the district to implement its programs, and one of the programs was inviting CARE, the Council on Islamic American Relations, to come teach about the values and virtues of Islam and to students. And so what that is it's called dawah, and it's part of Islam. Is you educate about Islam in order to draw people in and have them convert. So this person had promoted that and helped get the district to pay for it. I think it took about 2 days, and we were able to get somewhere around 4,500 or 5,000 very angry emails that were sent to the district leadership, the PTA leadership, the California PTA leadership, demanding that action be taken and that this be investigated. And I want to be clear, everything that PRK does, we never demand anyone be fired. We demand investigations. We demand ed codes be followed. Whatever that looks like in the district is for the leadership to decide. I think it was a day later that they did not, out of very little fanfare, they went onto Facebook and they announced the total dismantling of the DEI group. Everybody on it, not just this person, everyone was, the whole thing was dismantled. It was a big win, yeah. And one of the people who was dismantled, she proceeded to go to the next board meeting, and she definitely called us racist, MAGA, right-wing, zealot, white supremacist. I also think it's fascinating when Jews are called white supremacists.
Can I
Yes.
add on to this? Because I think it's important for people to understand, if you don't already, that PTA really is the vehicle for DEI to get into your schools. And the PTA, the California PTA, is a very active political organization that works hand in glove with the CTA, the California Teachers Association. They work hand in glove with the Democratic Party. And so in my district, at least, I think most districts have this council of PTAs, where representatives from each school site send somebody to be on this council, and they're highly politically active. They're usually in bed with the local union, and they're the people who are, in my case, trashing me on Facebook and coming up with their little strategies. Every meeting, the same people from the same group have the same talking points, and they're very aggressive, very political. So that, watch out for the PTA being the vehicle for DEI to get into your district, because then they'll do things that are, they're not getting any district funding. It's just PTA volunteer dues, and so they can have these like radical book club meetings where they have a struggle session for all the white ladies to, do the things.
Atone for their
Yes.
sins. Yes. So I want to. There's one more question here before we open it up to Q&A. But this is a hard fight for each of you in your different capacities. Words of encouragement for fellow parents and citizens. And again, I stress you don't need to be a parent of a child in the district to get engaged in this fight. You are a constituent and a resident in the community. You pay taxes in California, unless you're the guy who wrote that book, and he probably doesn't pay taxes because he's an amazing capitalist, despite the fact that he's a Marxist, charging $1,500 an hour for his services. I always laugh and say that the liberated ethnic studies people are the worst Marxists in the history of communism because they make so much money. I'm actually quite jealous, but what words of encouragement do you have for the parents, but also for just the citizens who live in these districts to continue this fight? Yes.
So as Frank stated earlier, so I met Frank when I started speaking out at the board meetings a couple years ago, and he planted these little seeds. Rachelle, you guys should think about starting a grassroots organization. I was like, I can't even think of taking one more thing on my plate. I work, kids, advocating for the schools like a full-time job, and seeing the same faces at the board meeting, seeing nothing done, like they just never responded to our emails, and it finally clicked one day, okay, we need to do something more. So that's when we created PCW, PC Community Watch, and I will have to say, with the whole superintendent scandal, we had so many parents tell us, thank God you guys are around, thank you for coming, supporting us, encouraging us, the ones who didn't want to speak, we said, we'll be there with you, and once one spoke, then they spoke again, and it got easier and easier, and so having these grassroots in every district, if you don't, is so, so important, because we feel the momentum now. Jedi is gone. The superintendent has been terminated. The next focus really is on having the board be accountable for their lack of action, not protecting these children for almost a year. And it's been a huge, we're really starting to get boots on the ground too, like the door knocking, and now we have more people involved, and more people want to get involved. And with the superintendent scandal, that brought a lot of attention to what's going on in the district and people watching the board meetings. So it all starts with just, it was just a small group of us, and now we're growing. We've got hundreds subscriptions on our email list, and we have one of our great things on our website is submit a tip, and we have a submit a tip that people can send. We get a lot of things from teachers, people that are really afraid to speak out but want to show us what's going on in the district. So it's really creating change. We've had 2 big wins this last year, and this year I anticipate us getting a lot more, and I'm really focusing on what our motto is, which is student success, transparency, and parental rights.
I'm going to borrow a phrase from my friend Roxanne Hogue. She's amazing in LA County. And she says, just be a little brave. That's all you have to do. And when you're a little brave, you're encouraging other people to also be a little brave, and it spreads. And we no longer have to pretend and speak this compelled language that is being forced upon us. I think most people, even the people who have their pronouns on LinkedIn, I think most people know it's ridiculous, but they feel like they have to do it or they're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their social standing. So if we're all just a little bit brave, we can encourage others to do the same. And if you're not able to do that, you might live a comfortable life, but your kids won't. Your kids are going to have to pick up the mantle. So do this for your children and for your grandchildren.
I think to conclude a little bit, especially as I look back on this journey, as I think, here I am 40, I started this when I was 32, it was completely unintentional. For a lot of people, it starts with a personal experience or a spark of curiosity. Encourage people to be curious and to do a little investigation, show them a little bit of evidence. But I've been analyzing this so much because everybody says courage is contagious, and that's true. Fear is contagious also. So spread courage wherever you can, because people are often, from what I've seen, I've known parents that I've talked with who have a slam dunk lawsuit in their hands, and there's pro bono law firms willing to take and represent those cases. But the difference between action and inaction is often whether there is courage or fear. So we have to spread courage. I think too, I'm gonna just share briefly, my dad is a career firefighter, fire captain, fire marshal. Every family vacation we went on, there was a call, and he was usually the first there before the 911 crew came, whether it was an accident, a fire, something. Dad was there. And I remember talking with my dad many times about his calls that he would go on. When you're a firefighter and you're responding to an emergency, whether it's a fire or a car crash, medical aid kind of situation, your focus is to save as many as you possibly can, and you cannot live with the weight of what you didn't accomplish. You have to focus on what you are accomplishing. So a lot of times when I look at the outlook of this country and what's going on right now, I'm very much thinking as a firefighter would, because that's my dad's life career, and thinking if I'm going into a fire situation, I'm going to rescue as many people, as many animals, as many houses as I possibly can. And for every single one of those, it's going to make the difference forever. So our opportunity is to speak the truth in love, compel others to step up and take action, and spread courage and truth. And for as much as we can do that, this country and the families in this country are worth it. Every bit worth it. And you never know what may happen. As for me, I'm a Christian, and I know that there is nothing that I've done that could not have happened without God in my life, and without Him being willing to just use a willing vessel that's saying, okay, here I am, what are we doing today? Because too many things in my journey have come together so easily, and I can't not know that His hand was a part of that. So I think that's important. I mean, if you ever heard about the Spreckles lawsuit, we were talking about teachers that are socially transitioning kids. I was at a brink of quitting all of this advocacy after what happened in Salinas, because our house was stalked. And it got kind of frightening for a bit there. And I was convinced fear was starting to set in. And My husband, my family said, we don't want you to quit. You need to be doing this still. And at that time, I started getting all these messages. Have you heard the story about Abigail Schreier about this teachers union leaked audio? I read the story, and then I start getting these texts from parents. There's mom in Spreckles that needs your help. Jessica Conan became one of my dearest friends. And her lawsuit with Center for American Liberty was successful. It put that school district and so many others on notice that if you're going to socially transition a kid, get ready to pay. And that's the message that sometimes we need to send, is be courageous and step up. If anybody wants to talk afterwards, a lot of my research has led me over the last several years into community schools, which is an equity strategy. And they are, in my opinion, almost as if they are the final nail in the coffin to public education. Everybody needs to know about community schools, the marketing bait and the switch, and we need to know why there is serious concern, not just to the academic excellence and merit, but the future of our country and the existence of the family. So, but also I just want to say thank you to CFER, and especially to Wenyuan. I would also have to concur with Lance that Wenyuan doesn't always get the praise that she deserves, but when I was going through ethnic studies, Wenyuan would stop everything that she's doing to take a call from me, to offer advice, to offer help. She is just a tremendous woman, very smart, and I love this organization, so please, please, please support everything that they're doing.
Agreed. So I'm gonna, even though I'm not on the panel, I'm gonna add my own bit of advice, which is something that I bring from my former career, where I was very much involved in lobbying Congress on pro-Israel initiatives. And this is something that has never really been an easy topic and is always usually divisive. So, you know, everyone knows you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics. So what happens when you put politics and religion together? It's like the ultimate taboo. But when you are discussing these things with someone across the table from you, you don't know where they come from or who they are or what their life experience has been. And I know these are kind of like buzzwords that they actually destroy for the rest of us. But you come at it with a desire to connect with the person, to learn from them, and also have them see you as a person. So if they're sitting in front of you and they have, you know, I know this is going to be hard, but a Harris, what's his name, Walls, pin, you know, maybe just hold in that reaction, start talking to them, try to understand why they think that the way that they think. Try to get them to see the way you think and see if you can't meet somewhere in the middle, because that's actually where the real growth and the real collaborative work happens between educators and experts and parents, who are often sort of at the bottom of the list, but who I think should be at the same level. So that would be my advice. Does anybody have any questions? Of course, all the way in the back. Oh, hang on.
I'm just curious because about the grassroots. I think that's important, and Frank mentioned it. What do you think about Moms for Liberty being a grassroots, or does it have too much? I don't know. What do you think about it? I'm a candidate. I'm also a teacher in the district where I'm going to be a candidate for, that I am a candidate for. And so Moms for Liberty has approached me, and I'm part of Moms for Liberty, but I didn't put it on my candidate statement. I'm in a Democrat area, Santa Ana, so should I? I know, right?
No, don't.
Okay.
I love Moms for Liberty. By the way, if anyone here is not a member, join,
Right.
and then add your kids' schools to the injunction that was just issued in the Kansas case against the Title IX regulations. I successfully have now gotten the injunction applied to 4 schools in my district. So Moms for Liberty is
Sorry,
amazing.
can you just explain what that injunction is?
Long story short, the new Title IX regs under the Biden-Harris administration basically turn Title IX on its head. And they say, now it's not sex discrimination, it's gender identity, and whatever anyone chooses to be is their sex. And so now boys can compete in girls' sports for girls' scholarships, things along those lines. It also eliminates due process, and that's a huge problem for young men in college and in high school. So Moms for Liberty went to court in Kansas and got an injunction issued against these regulations. The injunction applies to every school attended by children of Moms for Liberty members and Young America's Foundation. So it's fantastic. But to your question, if you're in a Democrat area and you want to win, I wouldn't promote that as a strategic move. That's just my opinion. Mary? I agree. Mary agrees.
Politics is politics, and you have to play the game in order to get a seat at the table. And you sort of have to know who's with you and who's against you, especially in a district like that.
Well, what I always say is take the endorsement, but use it sparingly. Use it where it's appropriate. Just keep it in your back pocket. Don't.
Yes, so I don't know if you heard in the back, but Mari's saying take the endorsement, but just hang on to it and use it sparingly, only when appropriate. You know, don't have it on your website, don't have it on the brochures or the mail outs, but use it when you are meeting with certain constituents versus
So, just
general.
real quick about the Moms for Liberty injunction. As a teacher, 2 days ago, we had a professional development, and I went to the LGBT professional development, and they mentioned about the Title IX, and I raised my hand and said, well, what about the Moms for Liberty injunction? And the person from my district said that doesn't apply to California according to ACLU. So I had a copy of the injunction, gave it to her, and I said, well, that's interesting because all these California schools are listed here. So she said, well, email that to me and I'll get back to you and we'll get another opinion on that legal opinion.
From the ACLU?
So I'm just saying, ACLU is telling our districts that it doesn't apply to us. So we need to battle that misinformation.
Oh, this is constant. When I have policy meetings and I present a logical or legal argument, I am given ACLU talking points in response to whatever issue it is. And I've politely told our district, I don't take legal advice from the ACLU. Thank you, but no thank you.
Any other questions? Hang on, the mic is coming to you. Hang on.
Kelly, you mentioned community schools, and that's kind of a buzzword that I've heard, but I don't know anything about. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
there we are. Okay. Community schools have been in the works for many decades now, and they've progressed. But ultimately, it is a goal to have every school become the hub or the nucleus of every community where all government social services exist. So the goal is the expansion also of health clinics on school campuses. It is a combination of health and education for equity. So we're looking at health equity and also educational equity. But under the division of health equity, this is important, there's something called health in all policies, which is weaving health into every sector of government. There's something called the social determinants of health and also the political determinants of health. This expands out. This goes all the way up to the World Health Organization and those global organizations, but also the Center for Disease Control has an Office of Health Equity. So for example, there's a graphic that describes under social determinants of health that the social decisions that you make might impact your neighbor's health. So for example, we might need net zero carbon emissions because if you're emitting carbon, you're impacting your neighbor's health. Well, now we have a problem. So it's this concept of a collective. Communism. Exactly
no
right.
buzzword. I
But-
believe some
yeah.
community schools also have lodging and
Yes, they are. Horace Mann in California has been piloting housing. The California Department of Education just did a seminar on housing. But ultimately, they want to be open longer hours in the day. They want to be extending that into the weekends. And I call it the government nanny state because it's cradle to grave. And it's going to expand every area of government intruding into the family life. Additionally, there's public-private partnerships. So for example, one group does plan to do parent-teacher home visits for every school year, so every grade and every school year, the government coming into your home. So that's just part of it. But with regards to the expansion of school-based health centers, the predominant feature is the advancement of what's called SRHR, sexual and reproductive health and rights. So this includes all gender ideology, all comprehensive sexuality education, social transition. In Washington State, you can be 12, go into your community school, school-based health center at Nova High School, and you can already get puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones without mom or dad. So that's.
Thank you.
Doesn't that sound lovely?
No, thank you.
I think we have one more question.
The goal of socialism is communism, as Lenin has taught us. I'm joking.
Oh, that accent sounded legit. We have another question here in the front.
I just wanted to mention briefly, community schools, that term, the term community schools has got all sorts of meanings in the meantime. When I was in Paso Robles on the school board, we were actually going to install a, quote, community school. The idea was we had a bad or a poor neighborhood, and we were going to power in a bunch of teaching, rather reading mentors and stuff, devote extra services to it. But then the terminology got caught up in the World Health Organization, which we weren't going to do any of that stuff. And in general, this education industry, they play so many games with terminology where they'll take it. When I went to school, we called it a neighborhood school or a community school. It was a long time ago. Nothing wrong with those terms, but then the left takes them and they warp them, and they, not the way they bastardized the term equity. It used to be a good term, now it's.
Yes.
Well, and just to add, I think some of it is to condition the environment for optimal buy-in. So kind of like when social emotional learning started, as an example, they told me, the parent, well, this is for conflict resolution and kindness. So how could you stand against conflict resolution unless you're at home reading from the other side and seeing what is really going on? Because they want buy-in. So they have to have it existing for a while, get the public and school administration buy-in. But actually the older, decades ago, the plan for community schools was already this progressive, very concerning model.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of very well-meaning people have bought into a lot of these ideas because it is, you know, if you look at cults, if you look at brainwashing techniques, you start with two truths and one lie. And then slowly over time you shift to 2 lies and 1 truth, until eventually you get to the point where it can be all lies, but at that point you've completely turned that person or, you know, group of people into whatever it is you want them to be. And so that's actually what we're seeing. You know, when you say something like community schools and after-school care, especially for kids who are in underprivileged areas where their families, with parents work all hours of the day, that sounds like a great idea because it really provides a safe place for the kids to be, where they can be with their peers, maybe play some sports, maybe get some help with some homework, which to me sounds amazing. The problem is that that's the bait and switch. And that is what it sounds like. That's what the marketing materials say. What it really is, for lack of a better term, an internment camp. Or, you know, I'm sure anyone here who has immigrated from China can give us a lot better examples of what that looks like when it's really, you know, across the entire country. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was looking at the Power Unified School District Ethnic Studies curriculum. And they broke it down step by step, and then there was this one section that sounded awfully like what you've been talking about, and it's called joy. And I'm wondering if you run into the term joy. You might have heard it in the national media, but that's what they're talking about. another word that has been
Rebranded.
rebranded.
I haven't heard of Joy, but other than that of Kamala's very interesting speeches. But no, I mean, I think again, this is one of those issues where it's words that sound very good and positive, and you think that that's a good thing, and then the way they implement it is completely the opposite. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. I heard you talking about China, so
Yes.
I'm old enough, went through Cultural Revolution, and I remember my parents being paraded through school that they worked for. So, and I remember buying the books. I also remember that they actually come over the statue of historical figures. A lot of violence. I saw my school that my parents worked for got into a armed conflict with other school, and there were people killed because we were a neighboring school, both universities, and violence broke out and the people got killed. But I was young and we kids don't know anything, so we want to go see how people get killed. So, and a lot of other stuff in Cultural Revolution, I have materials that are comparing what's going on now with what's happening in Cultural Revolution. That I have found about 10 to 11 similarities.
One-to-one comparisons, correct?
Exactly, one-to-one. So this is entirely a Marxist methodology that it's very successfully, quietly slipping into United States of America. So
Yes.
I consider myself lucky. I went through the first one, and now I'm going through the next one, the mini one. So that's why I'm here, and I'm glad that you recognize that's coming through America, and we need to unite it in the fight against it.
Indeed. I think one of the things that's most fascinating to me is the fact that all of these people who we are fighting on the ground are actually not shy about telling us that that is what they want. They call themselves Marxist revolutionaries. They want to overthrow America. You saw the woke kindergarten, in the film, that whatever. That's the goal, is to destroy America, right? And they're not shy about telling us that. They say, we want to overthrow the US government. We want to eliminate capitalism. We want to dismantle the United States of America, and they actually mean exactly what they say. The issue is that most Americans don't want to believe it. They want to think that, oh, actually, no, they just want to make things better for, underprivileged, kids. But I will say I grew up in a mobile home, okay? So I don't know how much more underprivileged you get than growing up in a double wide, but I did, and that's because my parents were immigrants, and they worked really hard and saved a lot of money, and they did not spend it on a big fancy house. So when they talk about making things equal, but then they take away honors courses and they take away opportunity for students who might be brilliant, but who live in a mobile home park, not that I'm brilliant, but like that is the exact opposite of the American dream, what my parents came here for.
And I also wanted to add that most people aren't actually like that. They're not intentionally saying, I want to overthrow the government, I want a Marxist revolution. They're useful idiots who've fallen for the propaganda, and then they aggressively parrot it because they believe they're doing something good.
Yes.
They don't believe that they're helping overthrow a free government, but they are.
Yes.
And
I think, again, I don't know how people ask me this all the time because I work in the Jewish community space, but no one's immune to this indoctrination. It's not like Jews are immune. It's not like immigrants from China are necessarily immune. I think it's, as anybody is susceptible to falling prey to a cult, in the same way that anyone is susceptible to falling prey to this specific cult. And I think, people like you who will spend that many hours reading and researching, I want to thank you for for sharing your information with other parents who don't or can't, or who couldn't see it. And that you're providing it in a way that they can see it and understand it. So I don't know, do you guys have parting words before we release everyone?
I filed I don't know if this has been mentioned before today, but I filed an amicus brief on behalf of CFER and the California Policy Center with the Ninth Circuit in the case of BB versus Capistrano Unified School District. And that's, it's available online, so you can search, it's on California Policy Center's website. I think it might be on CFER's website as well, but there are a lot of citations in the brief to the ethnic studies model curriculum, pointing out the radical indoctrination that's going on in elementary school. And there are citations to the 71 sessions that the National Education Association just held on social justice, and all of the wild concepts that they are feeding to our teachers. So I strongly recommend that you take a read and share it and show people, because it's really important to show the evidence and show people what's actually happening.
I just wanted to thank CFER real quick because they've been instrumental in our group and being very supportive. Joe Nelvin, I've gone to his house many times. I even cried at his house. Wenyuan, it's been amazing with just helping us with so much stuff. Frank and so many people in this group and organization. I'm incredibly honored to know you all and be a part of this today. And just want to thank everybody.
I just want to say the same. I mean, I just can't say enough about how much I respect this organization and how honored I am to be here. I'm thankful for everybody in this audience because each of you has a reach. You know, when my family and my family's in the back now, when we go to a restaurant, when we're at the grocery store, wherever we're at, we're visiting with people, and there's ways to kind of weave conversation in. I've been known to be at a sporting event for one of my kids and just say, hey, you know, there's some really interesting things happening in the schools. And then you just get to kind of share a little bit. And you never know if you're going to plant a seed, a little nugget of truth with someone. But I love what you shared about how, you know, make an effort to talk with people across the aisle, because I think, you know, that surprised me too. I did for a while some Facebook posts, and I didn't know who was seeing them, but I put them as public. And then during the course of that shutdown with COVID, I had a group of moms from Monterey who said, would you be willing to meet with us for coffee? They're all Democrats. They had all voted for Biden. Many of them had donated to Planned Parenthood and stuff, but they had all of a sudden decided, you know what, we've seen some things, and now we're starting to think something's off. And so we started simply having coffee every week and talking about the teachers' unions and different subjects. And they were open, and many of them have now changed. They've become aware of things, and so it's possible. We just gotta go. So.
I have one for Eli. We did a screening of the documentary in San Diego at the beginning of June, and in the audience, this was one of the things that we did was we invited, we actually sent an invitation to every single school board member in San Diego. There are 43 school districts, not including the charters and the privates. We did get a handful and of school board members, and then also a couple of principals. Do you remember when Wink, was asking, how many in this audience identify as Black, right? And there were 2 hands that went up, okay? One of those hands is Gary Thurman, and he is the assistant principal at one of the high schools in my school district. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, I'm not convinced, but I want to have another conversation. And over the summer, he and I have become friends. And we debate about a lot of things, and he has now been placed on our district's ethnic studies implementation team. Yes. But it was because of the film that he was like, wait, I don't understand the connection between merit and anti-Semitism, but I'm curious. And so if you all would like to have similar experiences and success stories, please get in touch with Eli or Mars or Diana and bring this to your city, to your district, whatever it is, it can be a game changer in the best possible way. So that was just an anecdote that I wanted to share with you. Thank you. Thank you all.